stand up for just a moment? And I intentionally didn't tell you that Gary was going to be here with us tonight because we would all be standing in line waiting for him to sign his 150 books. And I wanted to spare him the writer's cramp. But as part of our awards ceremony this year, Emerging Civil War is pleased to present our Emerging Civil War Award for Public Service in Civil War History this year to Gary Gallagher. That's a mouthful. It'll take up 2 lines on his resume because it's so long. But I think it's fair to say that there would be no emerging Civil War without Gary. It's true there's no direct trail of breadcrumbs that leads from Gary to this 10th anniversary celebration, but there is not one of us who has not been inspired by Gary or touched by his work. And I bet that's true for every single person in this room. Let's see a show of hands. We have read his books, and we have seen him on TV, and we've heard him speak and give tours. He's been ubiquitous in the field for decades. So he's that Civil War guy we all know, even if we don't actually know him. Now, I didn't actually meet Gary for the first time until last year when I had the privilege to interview him about his newest book, The Enduring Civil War, which is his collection of columns from Civil War times. And it's a wonderful, wonderful book. And he could not have been more gracious as we spoke. He could not have been friendlier. He could not have been more fun to talk to. By the time we finished, I felt like we were old friends. And that's the kind of guy that Gary is, the sort of impression that was made on this field. But just because we all know who he is, I want to take a moment to share his bio with you because it might otherwise be able to take this for granted because, of course, he's a great guy, right? But Gary retired in June 2008 as the John L. Mellon III Professor of History of the American Civil War, the Director of the now Center for Civil War History at the University of Virginia. A native of Los Angeles, California, he received his Bachelor of Arts from Adams State College of Colorado and his Master's and PhD from the University of Texas, Austin. An archivist at the Lyndon Baines Johnston Presidential Library for 10 years, he began his academic career in 1986 at Penn State University. He taught for 12 years and headed the Department of History for 5. He joined the faculty of the University of Virginia in 1998. He's the author or editor of more than 40 books, including most recently The Enduring Civil War, Reflections on the Great American Crisis from Louisiana State University Press. He served as the editor of 3 book series at the University of North Carolina Press, Civil War America, with more than 115 titles, Military Campaigns of the Civil War, 10 titles, and The Littlefield History of the Civil War Era, 15 titles. He appeared regularly on the Arts and Entertainment Network series Civil War Journal, as well as participating in more than 5 other television projects in the field. Among his many awards, he is the recipient of the Cavalier's Distinguished Teaching Professorship for 2010-2012. It's the highest teaching award conveyed by the University of Virginia. Think about the gift that he has given so many students. The Philip Merrill Award for Outstanding Contributions to Liberal Arts Education from the American Council of Trustees and Alumni in 2013. Active in the field of historic preservation, he was president from 1987 to mid-1994 the Association for the Preservation of Civil War Sites, an organization with a membership of more than 12,500 people representing all 50 states. He also served as a member of the board of the Civil War Trust and has given testimony about preservation before congressional committees on several occasions. I asked some of my colleagues to share their thoughts and memories of Gary, and Chris Heisney gave a piece that I thought is wonderful. I can think of no other Civil War historian and writer who has impacted me more than Dr. Gallagher. I walked a good many battlefields with him way back when he led great field studies for Penn State and various other organizations. Standing on top of Nicodemus Heights on a balmy November at Antietam goes down as one of my favorite days on any Civil War battlefield. His dozens of books authored or co-authored and edited have profoundly enhanced my knowledge of the Civil War. I simply would not know what I know without his decades worth of scholarship. Finally, his work in the pioneering days of battlefield preservation are the reason the American Battlefield Trust and many similar friends and preservation groups have been so successful with saving threatening hallowed grounds for us and future generations to appreciate. If George Washington aptly earned the moniker indispensable, I think Gary Gallagher has earned that modern sobriquet in the field of Civil War studies, for sure. Like many of us, Frank Jastrzemski probably recalls watching Gary on the History Channel growing up, alongside James McPherson, Bud Robinson, Paul Hutton, Henry W. Brands, and others, will always remain an inspiration to me. He was, as many of us can attest, the face of the Civil War. But his work behind the scenes has been just as important. As Bert Dunkerley says, Gary has always been helpful and enthusiastic about sharing research. He cares about all aspects of the history field, research, preservation, publications, and has always worked to advance the field on all fronts. I appreciated this story from Sarah K. Byerly. From her days just starting out, I'll never forget Dr. Gallagher's kindness when I first met him at the 2015 Civil War Conference at the Huntington. We were talking about the Shenandoah Valley history, and I said something about Stanton, but I pronounced it as it's spelled with an aw, stomp. He quickly interrupted and very graciously told me the correct pronunciation with the and sound, Stanton, not stomp. Adding with a smile, say it correctly, they won't know you from California. I appreciate Dr. Gallagher's approachableness, she continues. The brief conversations we've had at 2 Huntington conferences and his research and presentations, the way he took time to talk with a nervous girl trying to make her way into the history field made a big, inspiring impact. And the pronunciation correction set me up for success in Shenandoah Valley Research later on. And she made a point to add, thank you. I can think of no better testament to Gary, though, than to share the words of one of his former students, Cecily Lenzenzack. She's one of the countless young historians whose lives he has touched through his inspiring teaching and thoughtful mentoring. For those of us who teach, this is why we do what we do. Here's what Cecily says. I would never have believed I could be a historian without Gary Gallagher. As an undergraduate in his courses at the University of Virginia, I had a front row seat to a teacher who engaged students to a degree that few academics are capable of reaching. In seminars and lecture courses, Dr. Gallagher emphasized the importance of understanding the past as people at the time experienced it. He spoke often of an adage passed down to him by his own graduate professor, Barnes F. Lathrop. Go where the evidence leads you and you'll be fine. He practices what he teaches and practices what he preaches. And I know audiences appreciate his forthrightness in tackling difficult subjects by presenting evidence rather than opinions. Dr. Gallagher's ability to communicate his deep knowledge of the Civil War era with verve and humor is what makes him an exceptional teacher and public historian. I have watched him captivate many crowds over the course of nearly a decade of knowing him, and often noted his graciousness in answering every question asked of him, even if they continued for an hour after his allotted speaking time. His public programs and efforts in the realm of battlefield preservation ensure that his legacy will stretch far beyond the thousands of students he taught at Penn State or UVA, or the hundreds of books he's written and edited. The field of Civil War history would be a far warmer place without Gary's presence. And I'm grateful that he fell in love with the subject as a young boy in rural Colorado, and that he has worked tirelessly to share that passion with others for the last 5 decades. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege to present this year's Emerging Civil War Award for service in Civil War public history to Dr. Gary Gallagher.
comment about George Washington struck home because I've been mired in problems with my teeth for the last year and a half. And I can empathize with someone who looks different in every picture, and it's because of his teeth, not because of anything else. This is very, I'm not sure what to say after some of the comments you heard. But I'm delighted to be here. It's wonderful to see so many old friends. I walked in and saw people who we've been hanging around together for 35 or 40 years now on battlefields and in gatherings such as this. I think the emerging Civil War is doing wonderful work because it has reached out to very young scholars and brought them into a tent, given them a real voice and a chance to share their scholarship with other people that they might not otherwise have. It's done a wonderful job of bringing senior people and junior people together. It's one of the things that was important to me when I edited the military campaign series for a number of years. That combined graduate students, public historians from the National Park Service, and academic historians. It seemed to me that there were too many individual tents in the field, or tree houses, whatever image you want to use, and that the people in each of them didn't interact with the people in the other ones very often. And they do have things to say to one another, very useful things to say to one another. And I think the more ways we can find to bring different kinds of people together who are coming at the war from different directions, the better off we'll be. And the emerging Civil War is one of the places that's doing a splendid job of that. I think I love the banner over here for the Central Virginia Battlefields Trust, which is doing great work on the battlefields around Fredericksburg, which are under my coming out here on Lafayette, and then Route 208 reminded me of the increasing, continuing, it seems like eternal pressure on historic sites in this area. It's just enormous pressure. I remember the first time I came here, I was 14 in the summer of 1965, and Salem Church was all by itself out there on Route 3. There was nothing around it. Fields stretching in both directions, both New Jersey monuments right there to look at, and you can barely find them now. It's changed dramatically, and it's through the work of the CVBT and the Civil War Trust and other groups, the APCWS, that we've done a lot of good work here. That work needs to continue. I'm not going to eat into more time here. You have a lot of great stuff coming. I'm sorry that I can't stay for the whole program tonight. I'm in the middle of moving from a house to a condominium, and there are people with papers waiting for me in Charlottesville. They tell me I have to sign tonight, even though it's going to be dark when I get there. But I'll just say again, thank you. It's fun to see a number of you that I've known for so many years. It was fun to chat with Gordon for a minute there. I had 2 of Gordon's books that he hadn't signed for some reason. Now my Gordon Ray books are all signed, and I can put them on eBay now as a set. I mean, you have to pretend that it's a broken set. They'll all be there. I hope you have a splendid time here over the next day and a half, however long you're going to be here. You're on historic ground, so have fun. Thank you all again. And let's work in everywhere we can for our field. Thank you.